In the tech world, it feels like there's this constant tug of war. On one side, you have this relentless drive to innovate, to move fast. And on the other, you have this absolutely crucial need to build things safely and protect our privacy. But what if this whole clash, this idea of progress versus privacy, is built on a totally false premise? What if it's not a choice we have to make at all?
Okay, so to really get to the bottom of this debate, you've got to understand that it all comes down to two fundamentally different philosophies about how technology should be built. And these two ways of thinking, they shape pretty much every single product we use.
On one side, you've got that famous, almost infamous mantra from the early days of Silicon Valley, build fast and break things, right? It's all about speed, iteration, getting to market before anyone else, and then worrying about the consequences later. But now, there's this other idea gaining ground: build safe and trust things. And this approach, it argues that in today's world, trust is the most valuable currency there is, and you have to design it into a product from the very beginning. So, how do we actually bridge that gap? Well, one of the most important tools in that Build Safe playbook is something called a DPIA. Now, I know it sounds super technical, like a bunch of jargon, but stick with me because it's right at the heart of this whole conversation about responsible innovation. A Data Protection Impact Assessment, or DPIA for short, is basically a formal process for looking before you leap. Before a new project that handles personal data can go live, a DPIA forces the team to just stop and think critically about the potential risks to people's privacy and, of course, how to fix them. And look, a DPIA is so much more than just some legal checkbox you have to tick. I mean, sure, it makes sure you're following the law, but its real magic is that it forces a much deeper conversation. It makes teams ask fundamental questions like, is this project even necessary? And it pushes them to build in protections for users right from the start. And this isn't just some nice-to-have idea. The requirement for a DPIA is literally written into major global privacy laws. From Europe's well-known GDPR all the way to India's more recent Digital Personal Data Protection Act. This is now a legally mandated guardrail for innovation all around the world. So let's make this a little more real. Picture this. A hot new fintech company is racing to launch an AI-powered chatbot. Super exciting, right? Huge potential. But this is exactly where those two philosophies we talked about are about to have a massive collision. And boom, here's where that tension just becomes crystal clear. You've got the business team, and they're all about launching fast, personalizing everything, and gathering tons of data to make the product better. But then the DPIA process comes in and throws up some really tough questions. What data are you actually collecting, and why? What are the real risks to users if something goes wrong? And this, right here, is where it can feel like progress just grinds to a screeching halt. Which brings us right to the central question, doesn't it? Do you see a process like this as a bureaucratic roadblock, just a bunch of red tape slowing things down? Or do you see it as a helpful guardrail, something designed to keep innovation on a path that's actually safe and built to last? Honestly, how you answer that question changes absolutely everything.
But what if that whole idea of a deadlock is just the wrong frame? The smartest companies out there are starting to realize that this big collision, it doesn't have to be the end of the line. There's a way better way to look at this. The solution is to reframe the entire process. A DPIA shouldn't be a verdict, a no that kills an idea. It should be the start of a conversation, a dialogue between the innovators and the protectors to find a better way forward together. I mean, just think about Apple's Face ID for a second. That's a perfect real-world example. They didn't just slap facial recognition into the phone and then try to figure out the privacy stuff later. No way. They engineered the entire system on a foundation of privacy, processing the data right on your device, keeping it locked away. They literally turned a potential privacy nightmare into a feature that users trust. And that's how you turn this whole thing from a conflict into a real collaboration. By using the DPIA to spot risks super early, you can start asking, do we really need all the data we plan to collect? And it's that questioning, that dialogue, that actually sparks innovation in creating safer, more elegant, and frankly, often better solutions. So, where does this leave us? What does all this mean for the future of tech? Well, it points to a pretty fundamental shift in what it even means to be an innovator. That old model, move fast and clean up the mess later, its days are numbered. The new paradigm is this: viewing compliance as innovation. These constraints, privacy, safety, they're aren't roadblocks. They're creative prompts. They force us to build smarter, more user-centric products. The challenge of protecting privacy actually becomes the catalyst for the next brilliant idea. And that leaves us with a really critical question, especially as we head deeper into the age of AI. In the long run, who's really going to win? The company that builds the fastest or the one that builds the most trust? The answer to that, well, that's probably going to define the next decade of technology.